Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Parent2Parent. I'm excited to be here with you today. I am your host. I'm Tanya Farron, the author of Raising the Well-Adjusted Child, a Parent's Manual. Check it out. It's available on Amazon. But today we're going to be talking about parenting a special needs child. So I'm excited to reintroduce to you my guest. I had her on, a few months ago. I've taken a little break from hosting my live events, needed a little break practicing my own work-life balance, and wanted to get back together with Erica. And so you'll be seeing on this channel more and more live events coming in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So they're all scheduled out and ready to go. So stick with us. But I'm excited to bring up Erica Spring again with me today. She and I were able to connect through a mutual friend and just have had a great time getting to know each other and had been able to participate together on other events and just wanted to get back together again. So Erica, introduce yourself to everyone, tell them about you and what you do.
Well, I'm Erica Spring, and I'm certainly happy to be back and getting to talk with you on this subject that means so much to both of us. I am a therapist. I own my own practice, which is Spring Services. And right now, I am really focused on trauma and PTSD and complex PTSD. So that is me, and I'm a mom. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. And so the thing that we love the most about this connection together is she's on that clinical side. She's working in the field, working with families. She just shared that, her expertise right now, or the area, I guess, of focus, I should say, is trauma. We know that a lot of our kids that have special needs too sometimes have experienced quite a bit of trauma as well. And I'm on the education side. So that's another kind of component, and we bridge these two together. And our goal is to put out amazing content to help support you as parents, so that you can help make great educated decisions and just have a really, wonderful and great life with your families. Really, I mean, you deserve to have a great life. And so, finding some resources, and we want to share those. So if you're following us on LinkedIn, I went ahead and dropped in the show notes our last session that Eric and I had. And if you go back into that, Eric and I really talked about ourselves personally and our special needs kids. So go back into that, rewatch that. It's about 30 minutes long. I try to keep it to that, but it'll give you a better understanding about us as parents and our personal experience of being parents of special needs kids. And so one of the things that I want to say, and I said this in that last event, was you don't always have to have an IEP or a 504 plan to have a special needs child. So my child has epilepsy, and she had, different things that she needed for her. I put her in the category of having some special needs, and but never had a 504 or an IEP to go along with it. So keep listening to us and stay tuned so that we can help you with your parenting. Erica, so Erica, kind of fill them in just a brief minute about your parenting and your children, just a quick little recap.
Yes, I get to be the mom to two awesome humans. One is neurodivergent. He has ADHD and he's on the spectrum, and he is 100% his mother's son. He stole my face, he stole my heart, and he stole my brain, apparently. And as a caveat, my son did have an IEP, and he recently, before entering high school, self-advocated to remove because he felt that he was ready, and he's been quite successful. He's now a sophomore.
That's exciting.
My 10-year-old, that's my red. She's got bright red hair, and she's a gorgeous girl inside and out. And that child has cystic fibrosis. She has very different needs than my son, and an interesting thing. One might think with a serious diagnosis like that, medically, that she has an IEP. She does not. It does
Mm.
not impact her learning. But what she does have is a 504, which allows her to get her medical needs met and not be penalized while she's at school. So I've experienced both with both of my kiddos and know the importance of navigating that system.
That's important. That's good to know. Good to know. So, just as a quick segue, in my book, Raising the Well Adjusted Child, A Parent's Manual, there are a couple of chapters about partnering with your school districts and about, maybe identifying or, being identified and maybe wanting an IEP and some of the steps to take and things like that. So, you can check those chapters out in my book, Raising the Well Adjusted Child. But let's get into these questions today because we have a limited amount of time. So, advice do you give to parents about identifying if their child needs some additional supports? Like, I feel like the first step is identifying and realizing my child might need some support.
Absolutely. I think, as a clinician, we see this quite a bit, whether it's a mental health diagnosis that's impacting kiddos functioning at home, in community and society, but certainly at school. Um, One is having parents understand that even though we might recognize that there are some differences, that this is not a value judgment. This is not a less than child. This is not a broken child. This is not a defective child. This is a child just like any other child, and they may come with a few extra ingredients not listed on the label. Which brings me to my second point, which is oftentimes people will struggle with the concept of, I don't want my child labeled. And
Mhm.
so what I say to this is, neither do I. Okay. And in my household and in my practice, no one is their diagnosis. Okay. Like nobody.
Right.
How boring would that be if you were your diagnosis? Right. So when we're thinking about parents that might be noticing this, one, you are the expert of your child. If you notice that something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. I think sometimes I've noticed that with new or young parents, that we have some people who will advise us, oh, you just don't know any better and you're new to this and maybe you have anxiety, and don't settle for that. Um, if you're noticing, say, a delay, if you're noticing a behavior, if you're noticing a symptom, and somebody's not validating what you're seeing, I would not just stop and say, well, it must just be my anxiety. Stay dogged in your pursuits of what you're seeing and continuing to navigate those systems that are going to support you and not insist that it's all in your head, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think those are great recommendations, moving forward with families. And um, I think that you do know your child the best. I think that is you said that in the very first episode that we had, you do know your child the best and advocating for them. So, a lot of times our first step is we tell families, if you're noticing something that's just off a little more than what we're noticing, and a lot of times parents see behaviors at home that do not, even especially with behaviors, they see behaviors at home that are not demonstrated in the classroom. And so they'll come to us for advice, and we don't see that, but follow your gut as a parent at home, vice versa. Sometimes we're seeing behaviors in a school and parents are not seeing them at home. And so listening to what the school is explaining to you and being open-minded about it is important. And I think that's the piece that I want people to take away from it is be open-minded about it. A lot of our families, our kids suffer with a lot of anxiety, depression. Those are also special needs for people, as well as, ADHD, ADD. There's a lot of, being opposite oppositional defiant. Be open to having those conversations with your educational professionals, with your family members. If a family member comes to you and says, hey, I just want to let you know what happened today, be open to listening to it. I think a lot of times we as moms, we get defensive. Sometimes we might be like, what do you mean that happened? No way, So let's just be open-minded, take in the information, think about it, absorb it, and then go to the next step. And so
Mhm.
the next step is, where do you go? What do you do then, Erica?
Absolutely. Now, this one I think is a challenging piece because I was I was predestined apparently to be this kind of parent because life had trained me really well in the role of what we call a case manager. So, for those not familiar with what a case manager does, they operate in any number of systems. We have school case managers, we have medical case managers, we have nursing case managers, we have oncology case managers. I mean, you name it, we've got a case manager for it. Insurance companies have their own staff of case managers. What a case manager does is I call them Grand Central Station. So, they tend to have all of these secret passwords as well as the secret passages to the resources that you and I maybe even don't know exist
Mhm.
or believe exist and need it and need to know how to get there. And so I love a good case manager. That is where I always start, whether it's academic, whether it's medical. There's there is so much information that a case manager can supply. Okay. Now, I also think that it depends on where we're seeing the challenges. If we're noticing it at school, we're going to want to, of course, call that school counselor, that school social worker, all the way up to admin. We're going to want to make a relationship with that school psychologist potentially. We might want to be an early ed for those of us parents that noticed it a year old that our kiddos were falling behind. And so picking up that phone, calling places, and we are in Missouri, parents as teachers, Missouri First Steps. These are some of the biggest lifesavers of my parenting career and my professional experience. Those people are boots on the ground doing life with you, and they provide a plethora of services. And even if they can't serve you, for financial reasons, because oftentimes these are met with either you have to have a certain kind of insurance or no insurance or a certain income, they are always prepared with more resources and referrals to get you to that next step. Medically speaking, you start with your pediatrician, you start with your specialist. If your kiddo is showing signs, you're going to probably, developmentally, you're going to go to one of those pediatricians and say, I need a referral to behavior and development. There's there's only a few designated places in the state of Missouri, by the way, that offer those kinds of evaluations. So please be prepared for a hefty wait list. And that is nothing personal. It's a state of the state.
Mm, good to know. Yeah, I would say, a lot of times, starting somewhere. So if your child is of, school age, starting with the school, they have a lot of resources for you. And I always tell families, don't be concerned about that. We deal in the school. Listen, we've heard it. If it's happened, we've heard it and we've been a part of it. So there's nothing for you to be concerned about coming to the school and saying, I have this concern about my child. How can you help me? They will find resources for you. At the school age, like Erica was saying, going to the counselor or the social worker that might work in the school, a reading specialist. It could be anything along those lines. And we're talking sometimes about out of the building services, but even inside the building, there are services that can, be helpful to kids. Counselors at the school based have sometimes friendship groups and divorce groups and different little support groups for kids to be able to help them depending on what their needs are. Again, we're talking a really broad range. We're not talking about one diagnosis. We're talking about special needs of any kind.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so that's a great way. And I do agree. I agree with all that. And the pediatrician is always a first stop too, especially when you're wanting to get some additional testing on your child. Maybe they will have the specialist. And especially if you're in their network, they usually have the other people and your insurance within that network that they can refer you to. That saves you a lot of that groundwork. But yes, wholeheartedly. Parents as teachers at the state of Missouri has just been a godsend. I mean, I'm an educator. You're a therapist. I had parents as teachers. I needed them.
Me
I
too.
didn't know
Me
everything
too.
about being a mom and an
Yeah.
infant. And I didn't
Mhm.
even know that you could get a prenatal visit beforehand. So when I was pregnant with my second child and they were coming to see my first one, they're like, oh, well, we need to do a prenatal check with you. And I was like, what? This is great. So
They are.
utilize those resources that are available for you to help you. And a lot of times, if you're seeing kids at a young age before school age, starting to have maybe some health issues, behavioral issues, they can add some supports in there for you early, with a child care center or something like that.
Yes. You know, in our community and in the Kansas City area, early education is hugely funded. And most of the public school districts have a program that begins at age 3. The requisites are usually that the child is potty trained, but that's not absolute. But what those early intervention years do is we know that the earliest intervention, if we can't prevent early intervention. And so when we're looking at any number of things, those those centers have access not only to academics, but speech, OT, PT, and mental health. And again, people think, okay, well, Dr. Tanya is an administrator and an educator, and she's a fancy teacher. And they say Erica's a trauma therapist. But you know what? In that moment, and those moments of despair, when I don't know how to help my son speak or express what he's going through, I trusted and needed those allies because I am just his mom. I'm his
Mhm.
advocate, but I'm
Mhm.
just his mom. I'm not his therapist. And
Right.
so that right there is another thing that I will encourage parents. You cannot be everything, nor should you be. It's not healthy. Okay. And if you need to
Yes.
come and talk to me about boundaries, we got that on lockdown too. We're not their friends. We're not their therapists. We're not their teachers. We are teachers. We can be therapy like, and we can be friendly. But there's a reason why we can't see our kids with certain lenses. We love them. And it's not that our helpers don't. We just love them ethically, right? We don't cross a boundary, And when I tell my son something, it's very different than when Dr. Farron says it.
Yes.
Like, I hear parents say that all the time. What did Erica do? Reinvent the wheel? I have said the same thing for the last 10 years, but there's something that happens differently when it's a member of that external team that I do encourage parents of those kinds of kids to build your team. You got to have a team.
Absolutely. And you're right. You can't do it all. And so they do respond to other people too better, differently, and they might say something in a different manner. And, so let them do that. And I agree. You can't be their end all be all for every moment. So make sure that you are being open minded, looking into different scenarios when you're seeing something off with your child or knowing this just isn't typical, doesn't seem like a typical behavior at the playground. This doesn't seem like typical behavior at the, so, paying attention to those types of things. So the other thing that I want to talk about is how we adapt what our kids are needing for support as they age. And this is
Mm-hmm.
a big, this could be a whole show, but we're going to touch on it right now. What are some of the things that you have to do differently as a parent as your child grows and ages? You just talked about your son asking and advocating for himself to be off of his IEP.
Yes. I think a couple of things. We do have to adjust our parenting. We would have to do this even if we had perfectly healthy, normal, whatever that is,
Mhm.
children. You do the heavy-ended front-loaded stuff up in the beginning, and then it's like what I call the lighthouse effect in their teenage years, which is you stay put and you show the beacon of light and you light the way, but you can't move.
I
You can't.
love that.
Yeah, when we become the teenagers, we are the lighthouse and they go.
I love
We
that.
shine the way. And so all children have to make it to adulthood. That's part of what I think is our divine mission as parents, is to get them into adulthood. That looks different for every child based on abilities, of course, and based on what society allows and
Mhm.
recognizes as a citizen, right? And so I know that I encourage parents to not fragilize their children. Um, I think one of the things that's, of course, hard as a parent is acknowledging that you're going to have to send your child out into that world of pain, be
Mhm.
it their first heartbreak, their first speeding ticket, their first F, their first fill in the blank.
Yes.
People, I think, are oftentimes guilted. If your child has a genetic disorder, oh my goodness, I gave this to my child. If you can't provide a certain thing for that child, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. And what I often see in the therapy setting is a fragilization effect, where it's like, because they have all of these other problems, I don't want to add dishes or chores to that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, so who's going to do them when they're 30 or 40 when you're
Right.
not there, right?
Right.
And so I have this outlook, which is I care very much about my child's abilities and their life, but I know that the world does not. And so I have a job to prepare my child for a world that potentially either does not see them, does not see their humanity, and is certainly not going to wait to understand them. And
Mhm.
so fragilizing really does impair the child's ability. I think it also sends a message that they're not good enough. And we could do a whole show on core negative beliefs and how that infiltrates a child. And so I very much encourage people, like my child right now with cystic fibrosis is cleaning her room, Dr. Tanya. And I mean a deep clean. Okay. The
I love
kind that's we're getting ready for the holidays because Santa can't
Yes.
come if we've got that much stuff, right?
Sure.
And she is sweeping and she is dusting and she is mopping. She is 10. Is it perfect? Is it pretty? No. Why? Because one day she might be a mom. Because one day she's going to have her own home. And if she
Right.
doesn't take care of it, I'm sure not going to.
Yes.
So we're raising citizens. So please raise them to at least have enough confidence to take on that world.
I love that. I agree 100%. Thank you, Christy, for stopping by. Just want to acknowledge Christy and Nick. Thank you for coming today. Appreciate you. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. That, you kind of blended both of those last two questions that I wanted to talk about. And I love that because as our kids evolve with age, for sure, we have to modify, we have to let go of some things. We have to back off of some things and let them spread their wings and fly. And I always say that, it's my job as the parent to kind of guide you out into that world. When you fall, I pick you back up, dust you off, right? Get you straightened back up and point you in the right direction, just like your lighthouse. I love that. I love that analogy. And so, really, knowing that little things can change as we are evolving with age. Oftentimes, we don't want that diagnosis for the child to be their crutch, right? It's part of who they are, but it's not all of who they are. I am more than just an educator. I am a mom and I'm a wife and I'm a daughter and I'm a friend and I am creative and you can go through all of those things, but my type A personality, which could be a special need, my type A personality is just part of me. It's just part of who I am, And so when we think about that, we have to know that that's going to evolve with our age and how can we grow and go with that. So we have to teach our kids tools, their toolbox, and then we have to remind them to take out those tools as they're growing. So I just want to say that, my family, my children, we've all gone to to a therapist. And this is part of my reason for having Erica on here is I want people to know that therapists are great people to go to. They are who you need to go to often. I don't want to say when this happens or that happens, but you should have a good therapist that you connect with. And interviewing a therapist is, like checking out who you connect with. And that's important
Mhm.
too. But going to them and having them help you with that, because there are times, as Erica was saying, that that we really, we worry about our kids. So we want to protect them and we want to make things a little easier for them if we can help them. But that therapist is going to stretch you and going to probably help stretch your child. And that's probably a push that you might need. And if you follow those recommendations, I would say 9 times out of 10, they're going to be really successful for you. And I know that for my daughter, when we were assessing medication, I had knew nothing about epilepsy, y'all. Nothing. Didn't know what medications were, how much they were, what kind they were. And I remember specifically the doctor looking at me and saying, there's more than one kind. If this one doesn't work, and I thought, doesn't work what? What does he mean doesn't work? I didn't know anything about medications and knowing how they can change personalities and they can change mood and they can change sleep. And, like I knew very little about it. And so I learned a lot, but I also knew when he told me, do not put her in a fishbowl and give her expectations. She still needs to do the dishes.
Exactly.
Because, right, you're scared. You just have this diagnosis of the coming down and you're like, this is my baby. This is my child. And I remember thinking, oh, that, and I will never forget those words from him. And I thought, okay, I know what he's telling me. And it's important to do that. And obviously she's 25, independently living on her own, manager of a bank, like incredibly successful young woman, very independent. And that is what we want as parents, right? We want to do those
Absolutely.
things. So that means, helping her with her sleep habits. That means helping her with rules, boundaries, with expectations of assignments, of homework, of cleaning her room, like you've got your daughter cleaning her room. So really interesting to be able to, do that and held this high expectations of them. And then let me see if there's anything else. So we talked a little bit about some responsibilities. Is there anything else that you want to say that goes along with holding our kids to a high standard?
Well, I think it's also still important to acknowledge that if they are having an off time, if they are having a down season, that we adjust. This is not a static thing. It's fluid. It's in motion. If my daughter, she messaged me this morning and said, "Mom, I didn't sleep good last night," and just simple question, and I said, do you need time to sleep in? People
Mhm.
with cystic fibrosis burn more calories than me and you put together. Okay, sister?
Mm,
Just
really?
do their basic functioning. So,
Yeah,
yes, so they fatigue plus the medications have side effects.
sure.
And so I put her in charge, which may sound counterintuitive, but we have such a trust and such a rapport that she knows what she needs. She lives in her body. I
Mm,
don't. And so this morning I said, "Do you need more time? Do you need more sleep? Do you need more rest?" And she said, "I may be tired when I get home, but I think I'm going to go because I think it's going to be a good day." And so she
oh,
went.
yeah,
But I think even just giving her that choice versus, "No, you're going to go," or "That's going to teach you a lesson," sometimes that's not reinforcing to a child that does have special needs with their bodies because they do need to listen if they are having a day, right?
yes. And it's trusting that relationship. And I will say, I'll be the first to admit that that's hard sometimes. Like that's a change. And so when you go from a child on no medication to medicating them and you see some behavioral changes and you don't know whether it's sleep patterns or insomnia, or, I mean, it could be a variety of things with medication
Yes.
that I have learned, and not really knowing the effects of that, and you have a teenager or a preteen, you're not really sure, are they pulling the wool over your eyes or are they really feeling this way, right? So having those conversations with them really can shed some light with you and setting up those expectations with them of that, like you're trusting them to tell you the truth. And
Yes.
I remember talking to my mom in frustration one time, and I remember her saying to me, Tanya, it's field day at school. They're tie-dyeing shirts. I'm pretty sure she wanted to be there today. And I was like, you're right. But we as parents, and this is something Eric and I are going to go in and talk about later too, but you know, we as parents, we're busy too. And we're trying to hold down a job and pay the bills and get the groceries and keep the family connected. And so sometimes we have to remember to take a step back and evaluate and stop for a minute, and myself included. Myself included.
Absolutely.
Let's see what Nick added. Nick added, "That's interesting. I feel being bipolar, but a fighter strengthened my son in the moments he cared for me."
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Nick, for sharing that. Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
thank
sure that
you.
that did strengthen your son very much. You are a strong lady, Nick. My goodness.
Yes.
It's amazing that she knows herself so well and they respect that. It is really true. It really is true.
And I
Exactly.
think that that's something that I noticed too is those kiddos who do come into this world differently, who experience life differently. It's not that they're little Buddhas. It's not that they have magic gifts or these special talents, but I do think that they have an awareness that other children may not. They have
Mhm.
a certain little person wisdom. They I don't like the use of the word mature, but I suppose it's the best word we could find on a whim. But a child who is chronically ill or has experienced some medical challenges does tend to have to grow up faster out of necessity.
You're right. They really do. I agree.
I mean, my daughter takes some upwards of 30 pills a day.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it kind of makes you grow up.
Just that in itself makes you grow up. Yeah. I know that my daughter couldn't do like all-nighter sleepovers, she had to go to bed. She had to get her rest,
Yes.
so those are hard things. You're right. That does make them grow up very quickly, very quickly. So we are at 30 minutes. My last question for you. I know it's so fun. I'm going to have Erica back. We're going to talk about some other things. We'll come back in a few weeks or so. But the last question that I have is, do you have a favorite parenting phrase that you would say to your children anytime?
Not suitable for work. There's a lot of them. All right. And I have two big sayings. One I definitely got from my grandma, and it is that you can always come home. All
Yeah.
right. You can always come home. My other one is if I don't know what's wrong, I can't help. And
Mhm.
that just leaves the door open for them, and as well as not make any assumptions, as we know that that's going to get us in trouble with a
Mhm.
kid anytime. So I just keep that open policy of if I can't know, then I can't help.
Right. Exactly. I agree. I don't know. My kids probably say I have a parenting phrase. I was thinking about this today, but one that has resonated with me is the one that is when you know better, you do better.
I
And
love
so
that.
I love that one because when I know better as a parent, I'm able to do better, and that is my goal for this, is to be able to help other parents to learn new things so that they can help their children and build great relationships with them. So with that being said, I know that you still have a busy schedule tonight. Thank you, Erica, for joining me
Thank
today.
you.
I'll be in touch with you. If you want to stick around after, you can. If you got to go, I get it. I'll catch up with you later.
You
Bye,
guys have a
everyone.
great
Thanks
evening.
for joining us. Bye.